Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. The tension inside the halls of Forrester Creations had already been simmering beneath the surface for weeks, but now it was beginning to feel like a storm ready to tear the entire family apart. Behind the polished glass offices, the glamorous runway shows, and the carefully crafted smiles, old wounds between the Forresters and the Logans were quietly reopening once again. And at the center of it all stood Steffy Forrester Finnegan, furious, suspicious, and more determined than ever to protect her family's legacy from what she believed was another Logan power play. The moment she learned how deeply Brooke Logan Forrester had become entangled in this shocking co-CEO battle, Steffy's mind immediately drifted toward one person she believed was truly responsible: Hope Logan Spencer. To Steffy, this did not feel like a coincidence. It felt calculated, personal, and dangerously familiar, like history repeating itself right before her eyes. Brooke had seemed content for a while, quietly holding her place on the executive team without demanding anything more. There had been no open rebellion, no sudden ambition for greater control, and certainly no visible push to challenge the structure already in place at Forrester Creations. But something had changed, and Steffy could feel it. Somewhere behind closed doors, conversations had happened that shifted Brooke's mindset completely. Suddenly, Brooke was no longer sitting comfortably on the sidelines. Now she was stepping forward, demanding more authority, more influence, and a seat beside Ridge Forrester as co-CEO. To Steffy, the timing was simply too suspicious to ignore. The transformation felt abrupt, almost unnatural, and every instinct inside her pointed directly toward Hope as the person who lit the match that started this fire. In Steffy's eyes, Ridge never would have even entertained the idea of replacing her with Brooke if Hope had not planted those seeds first. The thought alone filled Steffy with outrage. She could already imagine Hope whispering encouragement into Brooke's ear, convincing her mother that she deserved more power and more control within the company. Steffy hadn't personally witnessed those conversations, but she didn't need proof to feel the betrayal creeping in around her. The signs were there, and they painted a picture that made her blood boil. Hope had always felt frustrated about how the Logans were treated in what she often called Forrester country, and now Steffy believed Hope was using this leadership shakeup as a way to finally tilt the balance of power. What may have started as quiet resentment was now threatening to explode into a full-scale war inside the family business. As the pressure continued building, it became increasingly clear that a confrontation between Hope and Steffy was inevitable. Steffy was not the kind of woman who stayed silent when she felt cornered, especially when it came to protecting her family's company and the position she had worked so hard to earn. The next time she came face to face with Hope, emotions were expected to erupt with the force of years of unresolved bitterness behind them. Steffy would likely demand answers immediately, refusing to dance around the issue any longer. She would want to know if Hope manipulated Brooke into going after the co-CEO position, if she deliberately stirred up conflict inside the company because she was angry and desperate over her stalled fashion line. Every accusation would carry years of resentment beneath it, years of competition, mistrust, and emotional scars that had never truly healed between these two women. For Hope, the confrontation could quickly become overwhelming as Steffy corners her with sharp accusations and mounting anger. Yet Hope would not simply back down without defending herself. If pushed hard enough, she might finally admit that she encouraged Brooke to seek more power at Forrester Creations. But in Hope's mind, that encouragement was never about sabotage. To her, it was about fairness. It was about watching the Logans repeatedly pushed aside while the Forresters tightened their grip on every important decision. Hope may passionately argue that Brooke had every right to fight for a stronger voice in the company, especially after everything she had contributed over the years. In Hope's eyes, this wasn't theft or manipulation. It was long overdue recognition. And that difference in perspective would only make the battle between her and Steffy even more explosive. But Steffy would never see it that way. From her perspective, Hope's motives would look painfully obvious. Steffy would believe Hope orchestrated this entire situation as a desperate workaround to revive her struggling line and regain influence inside the company. Every move would appear strategic, every conversation self-serving. To Steffy, Hope wasn't standing up for fairness. She was creating chaos to benefit herself. The more Steffy thought about it, the more personal it became. She would see Hope not only as someone threatening the stability of the company, but also as someone once again trying to undermine the Forrester family from within. That belief would ignite a level of fury that neither woman could contain for long. The emotional divide between them had already been growing deeper with every passing day, but this new conflict threatened to push everything past the point of no return. Years of rivalry, jealousy, misunderstandings, and family division were now colliding all at once in a dangerous emotional storm. Every conversation between Hope and Steffy carried tension now, every glance filled with suspicion and unspoken anger. And as the co-CEO battle intensified, the fragile peace that once barely held together inside Forrester Creations began to completely unravel. The glamorous fashion empire suddenly felt less like a family business and more like a battlefield where loyalty, power, and identity were all being fought over at the same time. As the drama continues to spiral, the inevitable showdown between Hope and Steffy promises to deliver some of the fiercest scenes this rivalry has seen in years. The emotions will not stay hidden behind polite smiles or corporate professionalism any longer. Raw anger, hurt, pride, and betrayal are all rising rapidly to the surface, threatening to explode in unforgettable fashion. And in true Forrester fashion, every decision will carry emotional consequences that ripple far beyond the boardroom. Families will be divided, alliances will be tested, and old wounds will reopen with devastating force. One thing is becoming painfully clear inside the world of the bold and the beautiful. The war between Hope Logan Spencer and Steffy Forrester Finnegan is far from over, and the next chapter may change everything. The atmosphere inside Forrester Creations begins to shift in subtle but unmistakable ways as the tension between Hope and Steffy continues to ripple through every hallway and meeting room. Employees who once moved confidently now whisper in corners, sensing that something far bigger than a simple leadership adjustment is unfolding. Every email, every scheduling change, every glance exchanged between executives feels loaded with unspoken meaning. What once was a polished, glamorous fashion house now feels like a pressure cooker ready to burst at any moment. And at the center of that growing instability, the names Hope Logan Spencer and Steffy Forrester Finnegan are spoken more carefully, almost cautiously, as if saying them too loudly might trigger another explosion. The co-CEO debate has stopped being just business. It has become emotional, personal, and deeply dividing. Steffy, increasingly convinced that she is fighting for the survival of her family's control, begins tightening her stance inside the company. Every decision she makes is now filtered through suspicion, especially when it involves Brooke or anyone aligned with the Logan side of the family. She replays every recent conversation in her mind, searching for the exact moment things began to shift so dramatically. To her, Hope's influence is no longer a theory. It is a driving force she believes is actively reshaping the company from the inside. That belief hardens her resolve and sharpens her temper, making her even more direct, more confrontational, and less willing to compromise. The more she reflects on it, the more certain she becomes that this is not just about a job title. It is about power, legacy, and control over everything the Forresters built. Meanwhile, Hope finds herself under mounting pressure from all sides as Steffy's accusations begin to circle closer and closer. What started as an ideological disagreement is now becoming a personal attack on her motives, her integrity, and her place within the company. Even though Hope believes she acted with fairness in mind, she cannot ignore the growing hostility aimed directly at her. There is a quiet frustration building inside her as she feels once again misunderstood and judged before she is truly heard. At the same time, she refuses to fully retreat, standing by her belief that Brooke deserved the opportunity to step forward. That conviction keeps her grounded, but it also pushes her further into direct conflict with Steffy because neither woman is willing to bend when it comes to what they believe is right. As the inevitable confrontation draws nearer, the emotional weight surrounding it becomes almost unbearable. This is no longer just about corporate leadership or family disagreements. It has become a collision of pride, identity, and long-standing resentment between two women who have never truly found peace with one another. The memory of past betrayals, past competitions, and past victories all resurface at once, fueling the intensity of what is about to happen. When Steffi finally decides to confront Hope directly, it is not a calm discussion she seeks, but answers she demands without hesitation. And Hope, equally tired of being blamed for every shift inside the company, prepares herself to stand her ground no matter how intense the pressure becomes. When that moment finally arrives, the air between them will feel charged, almost electric, as if the entire building itself is holding its breath. Every word exchanged will carry years of history behind it, turning a simple conversation into a battlefield of emotions. Accusations will rise quickly, defenses will harden just as fast, and neither woman will be willing to concede even an inch. What begins as a confrontation may spiral into something far more destructive, threatening not only their professional relationship, but the fragile balance within their families as well. And as their voices rise and emotions take over, it becomes painfully clear that this rivalry is no longer contained. It is erupting into something that could change everything at Forrester Creations forever. As the confrontation between Hope and Steffi finally erupts into open conflict, the tension inside Forrester Creations reaches a breaking point that can no longer be ignored or contained. The polished surface of corporate professionalism begins to crack under the weight of raw emotion as the two women stand face to face, each refusing to yield even an inch. What was once a rivalry built on competition and mistrust has now transformed into something far more volatile, driven by personal history and deep-seated resentment. Every word spoken between them feels like it carries the weight of everything they have ever disagreed on, every moment of misunderstanding and every unresolved insult buried beneath years of tension. Around them, the world of fashion and luxury fades into the background, replaced by something far more primal and personal. This is no longer about co-CEO titles. It is about power, pride, and the need to be heard. Steffi's anger rises first, sharp and unfiltered, as she presses Hope for answers she is already convinced she knows. In her mind, Hope's involvement is not accidental, but deliberate, a carefully constructed attempt to shift control within the company by influencing Brooke's ambition. The suspicion that has been building inside her now spills out in waves, each accusation more pointed than the last. She demands clarity, refusing to accept vague explanations or emotional justifications. To Steffi, every move Hope made feels calculated, every encouragement toward Brooke feels strategic, and every claim of fairness feels like a disguise for personal gain. Her frustration is not just professional, it is deeply emotional, tied to years of rivalry that have never fully healed. Hope, however, refuses to be reduced to the role of villain in Steffi's narrative. Even under pressure, she holds her ground, her voice carrying a mixture of frustration and conviction. She insists that her actions were not about manipulation or control, but about justice and long overdue recognition for her mother. In Hope's eyes, Brooke has spent years contributing to Forrester Creations without receiving the respect or authority she deserves, and encouraging her to step forward was an act of support, not sabotage. Yet the more she explains, the more it becomes clear that neither woman is truly listening to the other. They are not just debating facts, they are defending entirely different versions of reality, each shaped by personal history and emotional bias. The intensity between them only deepens as the conversation spirals further out of control. What begins as a confrontation quickly evolves into a collision of worldviews, where compromise feels impossible and understanding feels out of reach. Steffy sees a threat to her family's legacy, while Hope sees a pattern of exclusion that has followed the Logans for years. Every sentence exchanged only widens the emotional gap between them, making reconciliation feel more distant with every passing moment. The energy in the room becomes heavier, charged with unresolved pain and competitive fire, as neither woman is willing to step back from her position. And just when it seems the confrontation might finally reach its peak, the emotional stakes rise even higher as outside pressures begin to echo through their already fractured exchange. The co-CEO decision looming over Forrester Creations becomes more than just a corporate matter. It becomes the symbol of everything they are fighting for. Authority, identity, legacy, and validation all collide in this single moment, turning their argument into something far more significant than either of them intended. The building itself seems to echo with the consequences of their conflict, as though every hallway and office is absorbing the impact of their words. By the time the confrontation begins to wind down, there is no sense of resolution, only exhaustion and a deeper divide than before. Neither Hope nor Steffy has truly won, and neither has truly backed down. Instead, what remains is a sharpened rivalry, now more personal, more intense, and more dangerous than ever. The foundation of any fragile peace that once existed between them has been shattered, leaving behind only uncertainty about what will happen next. And as they part ways, it is clear that this is not the end of their conflict, but the beginning of an even more explosive chapter inside Forrester Creations, where every decision from this point forward will carry consequences neither of them can escape. In the aftermath of the confrontation, a strange silence settles over Forrester Creations, the kind of silence that feels louder than any shouting match. Doors close a little more carefully, conversations drop into hushed tones, and even the most confident employees begin moving with caution, as if the building itself has become unpredictable. Hope and Steffy may have walked away from their clash, physically separated, but emotionally the impact lingers in every corner of the company. Nothing feels settled, only suspended, like the calm after a strike that everyone knows is only the first of many. The co-CEO decision now carries a heavier weight than ever before, no longer just a leadership choice, but a spark that has already begun reshaping alliances. And beneath it all, one question quietly grows louder. How far is each woman willing to go to win? Steffy retreats into strategy mode almost immediately, refusing to let emotion cloud her next move for long. Even though anger still burns beneath the surface, she channels it into focus, analyzing every angle of the situation with sharper intensity. In her mind, this is no longer about reacting. It is about controlling the narrative before it spreads further out of her hands. She begins considering who inside the company can be trusted, who might be influenced, and who could shift under pressure if the conflict escalates. Every alliance matters now, every conversation carries hidden weight, and every silence could be a form of opposition. Steffy is determined not to let what she sees as Logan interference destabilize everything her family has built, and that determination slowly hardens into something even more unyielding. Meanwhile, Hope is left grappling with the emotional residue of the confrontation, feeling both misunderstood and unfairly targeted. The intensity of Steffy's accusations still echoes in her mind, not because they are true, but because of how strongly they were delivered. She begins questioning how quickly things spiraled and how easily intention was transformed into accusation. Yet even in that uncertainty, she refuses to abandon her core belief that Brooke deserved a chance to step forward. That belief becomes her anchor as she tries to steady herself emotionally, reminding herself that standing up for family and fairness should not automatically be mistaken for manipulation. Still, the cost of that conviction is becoming clearer as it continues to pull her deeper into Steffy's orbit of suspicion and conflict. Brooke inevitably finds herself drawn into the fallout as whispers of the confrontation reach her ears. The realization that her decisions and her growing ambition have ignited such a fierce backlash weighs heavily on her. She begins to understand that what once felt like a personal opportunity has now become a catalyst for division within both the company and the family. Brooke is torn between her desire to reclaim a stronger role at Forrester Creations and the growing realization that her involvement may be fueling an already volatile situation. When she eventually speaks with Hope, there is an emotional undercurrent between them, pride mixed with concern, support mixed with uncertainty. The bond between mother and daughter remains strong, but even that bond is now touched by the consequences of ambition and influence. Elsewhere, Ridge finds himself pulled back into the center of the storm, whether he wants to be or not. As tensions escalate between Steffy and Hope, and as Brooke's involvement becomes more significant, he is forced to confront the possibility that this conflict could destabilize the entire leadership structure of the company. His perspective is more measured, but even he cannot ignore the emotional volatility surrounding the co-CEO situation. What was intended as a structural decision for stability is now rapidly turning into a source of instability itself. Ridge begins to see that every attempt to balance family and business is becoming increasingly difficult as personal loyalties begin to clash more openly with professional responsibilities.